Busy Tuesday here on Locked On Lions, including a real Bush League move by a national host today.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here we go, everybody. Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network. Matt Dery with you on this, a Tuesday, January 3rd and a Wednesday, January 4th. Huge week for the Lions as they're in primetime Sunday night in Green Bay against the Packers. A day off for the team today. And we'll get into plenty when it comes to this Lions and Green Bay Packers game, of course, right here on this very podcast. Matt Dery with you. As I said, you can follow us on Twitter at Dery Speaks, D-E-R-Y Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page. And as always, if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, Locked On Lions YouTube, please subscribe. Your comments always welcome. We appreciate you guys very much. Locked On Lions today for a Tuesday is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. On the show today, certainly we have to get into what took place last night with Damar Hamlin and the Buffalo Bills Cincinnati Bengals game. Just a sad and scary scene, certainly, in Cincinnati last night. We'll give you the very latest on that. Also, Jared Goff. He's played in big games at Lambeau Field before. Did you know that Jared Goff's last appearance in the playoffs was in Green Bay? This is as close to a playoff game as you can get for the Lions. We'll dissect that as well. And also a national radio host who I usually like and does a good show. He's got a guy in his show that's a big Lions fan, acted like a complete jackass on his show today and also on Twitter, going after the Lions, Dan Campbell, and Lions PR, and what is a gigantic Bush League move. We'll get into that as well right here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. We're chasing down Ross Tucker for later on in the week. Thursday, Locked On Crossover with Peter Bukowski, the host of Locked On Packers. Here we go, folks. Green Bay at 8-8, Lions at 8-8. Again, Seattle plays the Rams at 4:25 in Seattle. If the Seahawks win, the Seahawks and Packers then are still alive for that 7th and final playoff spot in the 3rd wild card, and the Lions are eliminated. Lions are going to be rooting for the Rams. We're all rooting for the Rams on Sunday to keep the Lions' playoff hopes alive. If they pull the upset at the 12s and beat the Seahawks this weekend, that would mean that the winner of the Packers-Lions game Sunday night at Lambeau would go into the postseason. First things first, we got to bring this up. Everybody, I'm sure, have seen this 1,000 times and are refreshing their Twitters. But Damar Hamlin, the second-year cornerback for the Buffalo Bills, the pride of Pittsburgh, went into cardiac arrest last night after a collision and a tackle of T. Higgins of the Bengals during the first half of last night's game. They suspended the game. It was just so scary to watch. I give credit to everybody on the broadcast, Joe Buck especially, Troy Aikman. I thought after the game, once the game was suspended, that Scott Van Pelt and Ryan Clark were amazing on ESPN in taking you kind of through the night, and the fact that you have a football player in Damar Hamlin who went into cardiac arrest on the field, transported, of course, via ambulance to a local hospital at University of Cincinnati, and right now remains in critical condition after they had to get his heart up and running again right there on the field. Football is such a vicious game at every level, high school, college, the NFL, of course. And it's just amazingly scary to have to sit and watch that last night. And the NFL did the right thing in canceling the game, suspending the game. There's been no word if they're going to replay this Bills-Bengals game or resume it or anything like that. But how could you ask any of the Buffalo Bills players to come back out on the field after both teams went into their locker rooms and go play a football game when their friend may pass away, may die? And here in Detroit, this hits home for us. Chuck Hughes, 1971, died on the field at Tiger Stadium in a Lions, I believe, Bears game. And 1997, many of us remember Barry Sanders going for 2,000 yards against the Jets. I was in that stadium at the Pontiac Silverdome when Reggie Brown, linebacker number 59, goes down, hurt, and the ambulance comes out, and Reggie had to go to the hospital. So, it hits home for a lot of us, and it's just scary. And look, back in 97, sitting in that press box there at the Silverdome, you didn't know what was happening. There were no updates. There was no Twitter to refresh. There was, the reporters on their cell phones. This is 1997. None of that took place. But last night, certainly, we're all thinking about Damar Hamlin and the Buffalo Bills and he and his family, and hopefully he gets through this. It's scary. It really is. Football is just a vicious, vicious game and sport, and you got to give these guys credit to go out each and every week. And I don't know how the Bills, the Bengals, any of these teams are not going to be thinking about Damar this weekend and going back out there and playing. It's going to be difficult to block out. Just a really, really scary scene last night, but I thought handled pretty well by the folks in Cincinnati and everybody, the officials, both teams kind of getting together and going, we can't continue to play. So we're certainly thinking about Damar Hamlin and the Bills today. All right, I want to get to the Pat McAfee show because I really, I want to talk about the game, Lions and Packers. There's so many angles we're going to get to this week, and we're going to have the crossover on Thursday. Like I said, hopefully going to get Ross Tucker on Friday. I'm working on some other things for maybe tomorrow. But for some odd reason, Dan Campbell and Lions PR is in the news, and they did nothing wrong. And a guy who played in the NFL and who's pretty respected in the media game made a huge mistake today. And we'll tell you about that coming up next. First, though, we told you earlier about our friends at PrizePicks. We love PrizePicks. So much fun, daily fantasy, and it's done right, all right? You pick some players, and you go up against the projections each and every week or whenever you want. And it's not just NFL. You can do NBA, NHL, college basketball tonight, etc. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections, all right? Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. So Sunday night, if you think DeAndre Swift's going to run for more than 80 yards, if that's the projected number, you can do over, you can do under, you can put some money down on that. Same with Jared Goff passing yards, Amon-Ra St. Brown. All of those projections are all there for you at prizepicks.com or on the PrizePicks app. Download the app, go to the website, sign up and play daily fantasy sports. It's a lot of fun. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions, everybody. Locked On Podcast Network. Matt Dery with you. Thanks for making us your first listen. Yesterday on Twitter, Pat McAfee, I believe it's at the McAfee Show, and I'm not going to play the audio clip today because that would give it any kind of some credence. I'm not even going to do it. But Pat McAfee tweeted yesterday that the Lions denied his request to have Dan Campbell on his show this week. Of course, Lions are playing the Packers, primetime Sunday night. Evan Foxy on that show, and I don't know him, but I've seen him on the show, is a big Lions fan. And McAfee tweeted out that the Lions denied his request to have him on the show, which, why would you put that on social media? Throwing the PR department or Campbell or anybody from the Lions under the bus. Not every interview request is going to be granted throughout the season. All right, so that was strike one against McAfee. Today, Pat doubles down on his show as he's got A.J. Hawk on with him and Aaron Rodgers during Rodgers' segment, where McAfee basically is ripping on the Lions PR department and Campbell for not putting him on the show and for basically saying, oh, they better win this week. And this is, I can't believe they denied our request. Dan Campbell was just on his show a couple of weeks ago. Eamon Reynolds, Solomon Williams, and the folks at the Lions PR department are terrific. They do a fantastic job. All right? I don't ask for a lot of requests from them. I'm not in the media. I think I entertain. I'm a podcast host, not a reporter. If I need something from Eamon, which I rarely ask, he usually helps out. He's a really good guy. He's been there a few years. When Eamon took over media relations, it was not an easy time in that building. I don't need to go into why, but Eamon and Solly and those guys do a great job. They're not going to grant every interview request for Dan Campbell this week, especially to a show that just had him on a couple of weeks ago. But to throw Lions PR under the bus and reference Lions public relations won't put Dan Campbell on and they're going to pay for this and they better win Sunday. Just Bush League. What a Bush League move from a former player who has a pretty big pulpit on his show and is on ESPN now on College Game Day. Sorry, bro, but you're not going to get him on your show every time. He was just on a couple of weeks ago. They're not going to grant every interview for MCDC, as Pat McAfee calls him. Just wrong. The Detroit Lions are playing the biggest game that they've played in years. All right, you could argue the 2017 game against the Bengals, the 2016 playoff game against Seattle, the 2014 playoff game against Dallas. You can make an argument this is as big a game as the Lions have had in years. You think Lions PR, knowing they're going to have to accommodate NBC now and Sunday Night Football and all the extra stuff that goes with that, they're going to grant every interview request for their head coach this week. It's also the last week of the season. It's also the biggest game of the season for the Lions. He's going to get they're going to be giving the Lions a lot of requests. Sorry, but the Pat McAfee show on YouTube, all right, is not going to, Campbell's not going to do it this week. He's done it before. I just thought it was really a trash move by McAfee to sound like some, jilted kid that didn't get his candy bar after dinner or his ice cream. And maybe it's all a bit. Maybe McAfee's fooling us all. Maybe he's not really mad. But, man, first the tweet, now publicly saying, with Aaron Rodgers sitting there laughing. Oh, yeah, they wouldn't give us Dan Campbell. Aaron Rodgers gets paid. Do you think Aaron Rodgers goes on weekly with Pat McAfee for free? He's getting paid. I just thought that was really weak. I think the Lions PR staff does a really good job. I love Eamon. I love Solly. They're good guys. There's good people there in that department. And to be blitzed like that on national radio or national TV or whatever that show is, I thought was unfair. And I hope Dan Campbell calls McAfee up and says, don't do that again. Don't embarrass my guys. And I bet Dan Campbell will do it. So this is a huge game. This is a huge week. I'm sure Campbell's getting other requests. He's got the radio show on the ticket on Tuesdays that he goes on contractually. He's got other contractual things I'm sure he's doing. Maybe he wanted to cut down on interviews, but he was just on with that show. So there's more important things than going on that show. And this has been such a good story this year. 8 wins, maybe 9. Last thing they needed was somebody like McAfee to take a little shot at the organization. It's uncalled for. And Bush, to say the least. Jared Goff at Lambeau Field. Sunday night, cold, dark, under the lights. How's he going to handle this? How's he going to play? He's played there before in big spots. The last playoff game that Jared Goff played in was at Lambeau Field 3 seasons ago. I want to tell you about it coming up next. First, though, we got to tell you about our friends at BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college football bowl season to basketball, NHL, whatever you need, they've got it for you at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. They are the best. All right, so Aaron Rodgers, the Packers. Everybody's going to be talking about Rodgers, the Packers offense, Green Bay going back to the playoffs if they win, and all these things. I mean, the Packers control their own destiny, and they have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. It was back in the 2020 season, so 3 seasons ago, that Jared Goff played his last playoff game with the LA Rams, and it was at Lambeau Field on January 16th, 2021. Packers won that football game 32-18. So Goff is returning to a place where he's played in big games before. That day it was McVay against LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's first year. And again, the Packers won the football game 32-18. Jared Goff actually played very well in that game. So if you're worried about Goff and will he be able to handle Lambeau, and that game on a Saturday, it got dark in the second half, so they were under the lights, all that. Jared Goff that day went 21 out of 27 for 174 yards and a touchdown, and had a passer rating of 105.9. Not too bad at all. Aaron Rodgers threw for 296 and 2 touchdowns and had a passer rating of 108.1. The Rams defense that day could not stop the Packers. And Green Bay just was too much for them in that game. And the Rams and Goff lost. Of course, the next season was a nightmare for Goff and the Rams. I should say the next season was, that was actually Jared Goff's, that was the 2020 season. That was actually Jared Goff's last game as a Ram. That's right, because he was playing with the injured thumb. The next season, Jared Goff played with the Lions, and this season, Jared Goff played with the Lions. So there you go. Jared Goff's last game as a Ram was a playoff loss to the Packers, and he played pretty well in that game. Again, had the thumb injury, but that was when the Rams decided to move on from Goff and make the trade for Matthew Stafford. But I have a lot of faith in Jared Goff this weekend, and I'll tell you why. Green Bay's got a good team, all right? Their defense is fine. I wouldn't call it an elite defense by any stretch of the imagination. Jair Alexander, their cornerback's been talking a lot of smack lately. They're starting to ramp it up and play better, all right? They did a really good job this past Sunday on Kirk Cousins and the Vikings passing game. Alexander basically shut down Justin Jefferson, but the rhythm and the routine and just where the Lions offense is right now, even if they're playing in a snowstorm Sunday night, even if they're playing in very cold conditions at Green Bay, I think this team can move the football. Jamal Williams is going to be fired up to play at Lambeau against his former mates. A lot of the Lions have been hearing the comments from Aaron Rodgers about the Lions after they beat them in Detroit, and he said, look, it was more about what I did. It wasn't about what they did. Then the interview a couple of weeks ago where he made the comment that they didn't have a winning record when they didn't at the time, but still. The Lions haven't forgotten about that. And this notion, too, and I said this yesterday, that this game will mean nothing to the Lions if Seattle wins is false. The Lions want to finish in second place. They want to sweep Green Bay. They want to finish 5-1 in the division. And they want to be a 9-8 football team and go into next year off a winning record. And I think Jared Goff is going to perform well. I think Ben Johnson will scheme well going up against Joe Barry, the Packers defensive coordinator and former Lions defensive coordinator. And I think Detroit's going to be in this football game. I really do. I'm not sitting here going, oh, man, Preston Smith's a good player. Kenny Clark, Jair. They got some good players. But I'm not fearful of the Packer defense. I want to see James Houston against Aaron Rodgers and Aiden Hutchinson against Aaron Rodgers. Look, Rodgers is usually money this time of year. Regular season, end of the year, at home at Lambeau, usually pretty unbeatable. But I could see this being a shootout. And I could see Jared Goff playing well in this game. He continues to take good care of the football, and the scheme and everything that they're doing right now is set up for success. And this past weekend against the Bears, and I know it was Chicago and they suck, but that run game was good. And you'd love to see the Lions pound the ground game again and keep Rodgers and that Packer offense off the field. So Interesting. Jared Goff's last game. I knew it was his last playoff game. I forgot it was his last game as a Ram. Was at Lambeau Field. All right. Thanks for watching, listening here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're back again tomorrow.